Aside from us being the highest grossing, I believe, legal podcast in the world, sponsored by a $5 billion, the world's largest legal tech company in Clio that have just surpassed 500 million annual recurring revenue and being exclusively sponsored by them since 2021. Aside from guaranteed sponsorship revenue, where the ROI on that is infinite, that's the wrong way to look at it.
All right, welcome business podcasters to another episode of Podcasting in Professional Services. I'm your host, John Tyreman, founder of Cedar, where we build media brands for experts like you. Today, my guest is Robert Hanna, founder and managing director at KC Partners and host of the UK's #1 law podcast, Legally Speaking. Welcome to the show, Robert.
John, absolute blast to have you with me today as a guesting on your show. I'm so used to hosting, so I'm genuinely excited. Love what you're doing, love what you stand for. I'm passionate about podcasting. I'm passionate about brand building and helping organizations and people see the value in all of this stuff. So real pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, totally. And I get that sentiment a lot that podcast hosts love being in the guest seat. So I love to be able to provide that value to you. First of all, Rob, before we get into it, I just want to say thank you for participating in our 2026 State of Podcasting and Professional Services Research Study. Folks that are listening to this can pick up their report at redcedarmarketing.com. But thank you so much for sharing your insights there and today. But before we get to your show, Legally Speaking, can you first just kind of set the stage for our listeners who might not be kind of familiar with your firm, KC Partners?
Yeah, so I help lawyers land dream jobs. So I have a legal talent solutions business and of last half a decade, content focused business as well, which is why the legal side of it started. So my day-to-day is I run a legal recruiting business in the UK. We service big law lawyers. So anything you see in the news where a company's taking over another company, we're probably hiring those lawyers. And we're also helping US law firms that are building aggressively in London to grow with their strategic hiring of UK-focused talent. So that's what I do principally as part of my day-to-day. Why do I do it? What gets me out of bed? My late grandfather, ran a very successful law firm in the UK, and I grew up from a legal family. He built a tremendous legacy, an offline legacy in his world, way back when, before social and everything else. And he got, at his funeral, one of his friends said to him, "Live respected, die regretted." And that really landed with me. He built a fantastic reputation in an offline world where word of mouth and what you did for people really carried meaning and went through generations of families. And I thought if I could carry that legal legacy, but in a modern, innovative, creative, researchable, discoverable way for my generations beneath me, my daughters, I think I can do good. So that's what drives me. That's what gets me out of bed. That's what gets me excited to build a kinder, more collaborative, global legal community.
When did you found your firm, KC Partners?
That was in 2016. So okay. I started, prior to that, I had a career for about 10 years in general recruiting across energy, oil and gas, procurement, supply chain.
Okay.
And then I realized that I felt I had the skills, I had the tools. I was getting fed up of making people money. I thought maybe I could do it for myself and also do something where I have a genuine why attached to it. I think entrepreneurship, really, you do need to have that burning passion and that why and that thing that gets you out the bed, because most days suck. And if you're comfortable with that and you enjoy that, you'll all keep coming back. So yeah, that's really my career. I was the first in my family to go into the city of London. I wanted to be the first in my family to set up a business in the city of London. And yeah, it snowballed from 2016. But I soon realized very early to starting my business in 2016, absolutely nobody cared that I set up a business. I need to give them a reason to care. Yeah. And one of those reasons was being new to business development strategy, outreach strategy, leveraging social, LinkedIn. I've been a LinkedIn top voice. I've advised LinkedIn. I've been invited to their offices around the world. I've helped them with product rollouts, such as their beta testing audio platform and various other things. I realized very early on that podcasting could have been that outlet, which I'm happy to talk more about at any point. But the real key is, it's great that you set up a business, but you have to get people to care and support you and champion you and give you a why to support your business as well.
So you founded the business in 2016. You mentioned podcasting as an outlet, and obviously that's a way that you've built your business up today. So the first episode of Legally Speaking aired in November 2019.
Yep, good research.
Thank you. Why start a podcast in the first place? Like, why that medium instead of leaning into some other channels?
Two reasons. One, way back then, we were the first in the UK to launch a legal talent, if you like, focused legal careers show. So we got blue ocean opportunity. This is 2019. We're in 2016 chatting today. Podcasts are everywhere. You can use a platform like we're using Riverside FM. You can do everything in house. You don't even need an editor. You can use their co-creator platform. You could DIY it yourself. They're really making podcasting very accessible for everyone. So the big takeaway from this is you've got an idea, take action on it, because you can be ahead of the market. It's better to be first than it is to be better sometimes. And so we got low hanging, early stage, early mover advantage in terms of being first. The further why behind that was, as I mentioned, sort of a little bit tongue in cheek before, that nobody cared I had a business. What I also was up against is very established competitors. So if you're starting a business in a saturated market, which I was, and I'm actually a big advocate for saturated markets because that tells me there's demand. You just need to find your way to stand out in that saturated market. So I was up against organizations, legal recruiting business been around for 10, 20 years, that have had the clients that I wanted to, my dream clients. And they were doing the very traditional things that you would expect that organization to be doing in terms of leveraging their database, chucking out job adverts, churning the wheel and doing the deals. And that's great, but no one's going to pick up to Rob Hanna. Hey, do you want to come and work with me? You've never heard of me. I've got no proven track record. I'm just doing this because I've got this burning passion and desire in my stomach. And so what I wanted to do is think, lead with value. So the podcasting was a great way to start conversations to lead with value. So rather than reaching out to my prospective client, which would be a senior lawyer in a law firm who's A, very busy, B, sort of very, very sort of not used to probably getting these sort of invitations, so it might be exciting and new, I thought I had a chance. So I'd say, hey, I'd love to feature you on my podcast. I'd love to invite you into my office. This is when back in-person podcastings were really giving them experience. So I would invite them to my office. I'd make them cups of tea. I would give them a really first-class experience. I'd give them the best to my ability interview. And then I would say to them, look, all I need is this half an hour of your time, and we will curate content for you. And this is new. We'll create a newsletter for you. We'll be able to pass this on to your marketing team for you. We'll be able to create some short form video clips, again, very early in short form video clips which are going to be an upward trajectory. So I'm starting to come with value because lawyers are busy technically servicing on their job, not necessarily so good at business development, profile building. Way back when, I think they're better at it now, and LinkedIn and everyone in the professional services space are catching up. And so we were able to basically pitch to them this great service, great opportunity to get out there, exposure, give them a great example. And then, of course, the journey is all around legal careers. So we could say this could be a great way for you to then create a video job spec for you to market out, which would help you with your futuring hiring. And then they'd be like, oh, but don't you do hiring? Yeah, we do. And suddenly you catch them on the hook on the back end, right? So it's organic, value-led relationship, good experience, really researching them, giving them questions that they wouldn't expect to be asked, to be interviewed to a higher standard, to establish a relationship, to then hook them to be your client on the back end. And that's kind of how the strategy worked, and it snowballed from there.
Well, I imagine that there was a bit of a hiccup in that strategy when COVID hit and in-person podcasting became a little bit more challenging. What was the impact of that time, and how did that play out with the podcast?
Well, that's the beautiful thing, right? You can either look at problems or you can think there's solutions. So that actually helped get our show global. Yep. I'm tuning in from the UK. You're not flying over here to spend half an hour of your time to sit in the room with me. You don't want the fuel cost. You don't want the time away from your family. You don't want the headache of it. But you'll happily jump on a Zoom or a Riverside and do a half an hour recording. And so it opened up the world to us. It actually opened up our horizons to what is possible to get access to legal voices in and around the world of law that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do so. So it 10x'd our show in terms of people that had been discounted that we'd love to have, because for us, we had the blind spots at the time. If you don't know, you don't know. I had never heard of Zoom really around the time of, when Zoom was becoming the platform. So it actually, in hindsight, was one of the most beautiful things that happened from a very obviously challenging time that made it table stakes now for virtual recordings. And as a result of that, we've kept that as our sort of forward medium. We do lots of mini series where we do MP. We've just got back from Ibiza where we've been doing poolside interviews. We've been to Dubai. We've done interviews on yachts. We've done stuff at G-Wagons at Mercedes World. We've done stuff all over the world, whole host of things. And we still keep that in-person experiential type interview. But a lot of it now is virtual, and COVID really set the play for that.
I do want to get into some of the ways that you promoted the podcast, but I do want to focus first on the business impact that the podcast has had so far. So you launched your business in 2016. You launched the podcast in 2019. Fast forward to today, we're in 2026. Has the podcast been, in your view, an ROI positive investment? And then how do you quantify that?
Aside from us being the highest grossing, I believe, legal podcast in the world, sponsored by a $5 billion, the world's largest legal tech company in Clio, that have just surpassed 500 million annual recurring revenue, and being exclusively sponsored by them since 2021. Aside from guaranteed sponsorship revenue, where the ROI on that is infinite, that's the wrong way to look at it. The way to look at it is COI, it's cost of inaction. Okay, so many people don't take action because they want to know the immediate ROI. I don't think that's an entrepreneurial lens. I think that's an accounting lens. I think that's a finance lens. I think that's a very closed lens of looking at it. Business is, it's not about getting lucky. Business is about more risk you take. The more risk you take, the more luck you get. And so you said, why did you start a podcast? No one else was doing it. People were afraid. People weren't really paying attention to it. And so those blue ocean opportunities. So the ROI, yes, if we were to track it in terms of sponsorship alone, is probably 200% plus. In terms of being out there, we're always, each week I'm producing shows, content, legal careers focused on my target law firm partners. My candidates are reaching out to me. We've made placements off that. We've had referrals off that. Average deal sizes are quite chunky in the UK. They're tens of thousands. But the real thing is, it's the cost of inaction. Or none of the opportunities and my personal brand elevation to, I've been able to collaborate with the likes of Gary Vee and go on stages and podcasts the likes of Stephen Bartlett, those sort of Dragon's Den, Diary of a CEO, one of the most popular podcasts in the world. All of these opportunities wouldn't have had to me if I hadn't leaned into the COI principle. So if you're sat here with an idea or thinking of a podcast or what else, stop looking at the ROI. Think, what is the cost of inaction? What could this cost me if I don't take action now? And I think if you switch that mindset, you'll suddenly start seeing, actually, there's a world of opportunity for you out there.
And so how do you hold yourself accountable to that action, right? That's the one thing that I think in all of professional services, a lot of consultants struggle with, is investing that time into those unbillable hours, right? So what motivates you to get up and act?
Well, firstly, I think you have to have your own self-accountability, right? If it's meant to be, it's up to me. So you have to have an element of self-accountability. And I also feel that in sort of my sort of belief in business generally is, if you're not passionate about what you're doing, you're probably not going to do it. So what I mean by that is, you may feel like you need to do a podcast, but actually, if you're not passionate about that, but it's going to be beneficial, is there someone you could maybe bring in and you could be part of your team, or people that that might want to do that could make it consistent or what have you? And everyone says they're time poor, they don't have time. Everyone has time to do a 15-minute interview in a week. And that 15-minute interview could potentially turn out to be 3-4 months of content, maybe a year's worth of content, if you really strip that down into a content strategy, into themes around the world, things going on in the world, anxiety, World Mental Health Day, diversity and inclusion. Like, if you touch on topics and things that are relevant to your audience or niche, or AI technology. So everyone has the time. And so I would say to people, in terms of accountability, is have self-accountability. If you're not passionate about it or it doesn't drive you, who are some of those people that could potentially help you to put the driving seat, put the metrics in place? Because in business, there are two types of individuals. Typically, if you're a business owner, there's visionaries and there's integrators. The visionaries are the ideas people that go out there. They've got a million ideas. None of them get executed without an integrator. So you might just need that integrator, that person that can help you with integrating and actually doing the execution, doing the value add, whatever it might be, following up on some of the processes.
I love that you're speaking in EOS terms, because
that framework works, right?
Oh, it totally does. And it's helped me organize my business, and a few of my clients operate on it as well, and they love it too. Rob, a couple of things that you mentioned I want to highlight and dig in on a little bit. So you mentioned creating content every single week, and then you mentioned consistency. So your show is a weekly podcast. So I guess I've got two questions for you. Number one, why weekly? And then two, how are you able to maintain that consistency? Like, what are the systems that you have in place?
Yeah, great question. So firstly, I think we could be an everyday show. Our demand has got that high. So we're in now the top 1% of shows in the world. We're a top number one for the UK, where we partner. So we're the go-to for a number of the major legal outlet YouTube channels, such as National Law Review, which gets 3.2 million viewership each month, that kind of stuff. So we're in demand. It's obviously my time. I couldn't actually physically do one a day with the other bits and ventures. So firstly, why one a week? Because we absolutely know the demand is there and people expect it. I'll use a scenario as well is, in Netflix, when you see your favorite series, You started getting into Lost way back when or what have you, you're gutted if there's not a new season coming out. You're gutted. So we're in season 10. And of course, now it's a commercial business. We've trademarked our content. We've got big ticket sponsors. We go to some of the biggest events around the world. I get flown around the world to come up and do a media and actually be the voice outlet for these legal organizations. So we built a brand. And when you've got brand, people want to be attached to it. It's really, really important. So absolutely one a week is because we know the demand is there, and that enables us to be consistent. And then in terms of being consistent, we've done over 500 episodes across 10 seasons. It's not just about putting out another episode. Once you get to a level and an audience, they expect quality. There's a reason they've been following you and expecting you. So your caliber of content and your caliber of guest and your caliber of delivery needs to continuously get better because other people are coming into the market. And I love that there's other legal podcasts coming out there, innovating, coming at us or trying to take market share because it keeps us on our toes. And I like that. And that's why I think, if you just have a podcast, you're at risk. We're building a community around that. And I can talk about some of the strategies we're doing. So consistency, we're also looking at the themes, right? So what are the big ticket themes? Legal technology, AI, efficiencies, big things going on that are going to impact careers. The key to a successful podcast is having a good TOI. It's a topic of influence. So our topic of influence is legal careers. And what I mean by that, if you're going to start a podcast or anything really, it's understanding what the pain point is. So for me, remember my holding company is my legal recruiting business. I want lawyers to be working for and to help them with new roles. So legal careers make sense. So people might be putting into ChatGPT now or Claude or Google way back when, how to get a legal job or top tips to get an interview in a law. So that needs to be our content, right? That stuff needs to be in our content to deliver to our audience, to deliver on our ROI, our TOI. And so we've been able to be consistent around understanding the key themes and things impacting our TOI, where we know demand is. So we can look at Google index data. We can go on Keywords Planner. We can go on answerthepublic.com. We can get all those Google index data points in terms of what are the questions people are asking. And then we go and get the absolute best guests to deliver on those questions and get their stories, because facts tell, but the stories really sell. And that enables people to really connect with our audience. And I think we do a good job of that. And we go above and beyond in terms of researching guests, in terms of asking questions that is not in the public domain. So when they come on, they're almost like infused and excited because they've never been asked these questions before, because going on a podcast now isn't as exciting as once was. So you need to bring out the absolute best. And so we just work in that top 1%ers of really delivering the best interviews possible for our guests.
I love the research-based approach that you take on the issues first, rather than identifying guests that you want to bring in just because they're influential. The Lost analogy is great because it really is a media brand that you're building. It's much more than a podcast. And
correct.
And I think that's kind of the theme that I'm taking away from our conversation right now. And I want to expand upon that a little bit, because you've mentioned a couple times of doing interviews on boats and courtside and things like that. Can you talk about going to those live events and how that ties into the podcast, and what has been your experience in the conversations at those live events and how that melds with the podcast that you've created?
Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for mentioning Courtside Conversations. So for context, that launched in January of 2026. And that is a blend of paddle, which is one of the fastest growing sports in the world right now, which is inevitably going to be an Olympic sport, or padel, which originates from Spain, with podcasting, with networking. And so I wanted, and there's a legal theme to that as well, with the courtside, etc.
Nice.
What we found is actually there is event fatigue, and there is death by hotel conference, there is death by lanyards, there is death by small conversation. And what's really important is to understand that we're all humans here. We all want to go out and connect with people, have a conversations, be ourselves. And so actually putting the networking and the chatting and stuff after an activity when your endorphins are up was a really smart play. And we were in the sunshine. It was when it was the Billion Summit in Dubai, looking out at the future museum of the world, incredible paddle courts. We brought 50 or so legal people together and we just played paddle. We had a great time. The conversations, bit of competition, lawyers are competitive. And then after that, people were ready to do some side interviews and connect and chat. And then we had a DJ that was spinning the tunes and sort of afterwards. And it just proved the concept that actually people want slightly different, interactive, immersive, connectivity focused events. And why did we do it? Because I think it's really important, if you're building a brand, to let people feel seen, heard, and valued. What better way than to invite them to an in-person event? end-to-end experience. Because yes, there's a like and a comment on Spotify or on LinkedIn or on YouTube, or there's a quick exchange, but actually shaking hands, or as my friend Mitch Jackson says, turning digital handshakes into real life hugs. That's really important. And I think if you're going to be building a community and as a podcast host and you're the lead or the voice of that, I think being open, and that's why I put on a lot of events. Another one is the Great Big Legal Offsite, which we're gearing up for this year, which you might have seen in your sort of research, was on July the 3rd. And we've done, again, slightly different format. That's all about the future of law firms, trying to add value to lawyers and people in law, but we'd make it fun. We've had an 8-foot AI robot that would go around singing Lady in Red, squirting the guests with water. This year's theme is going to be Laws of the Jungle. We've got America's Got Talent and Britain's Got Talent and X Factor's MC for the day, like the voiceover artist coming. And people are just wowed. It's like, wow, we don't get this in legal. Like, you're coming in, you're disrupting, you're being different, you're working on COI, not the immediate ROI. And then suddenly you get attached to one of the world's biggest legal tech brands that see what you're doing, that are trying to be progressive, and it suddenly starts becoming a great collaboration partnership, but also your ROI then starts 10, 20, 100xing.
I think you're very forward thinking in terms of focusing on the experiential aspect of that. I see that as being like that's in the future, but you're doing this right now. And
well, yeah, again, remember when I was doing the podcast, no one was doing it. So again, people are sleeping. Right. And you've got to wake up that podcasts are not exciting anymore. No one cares that you've started the podcast. No one cares about the Legally Speaking podcast outside of the community that I've built. But new people, I need to go out there and get these new people and think of growth, think of attraction, think of leaning into what I've already built, because everyone's probably read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, the flywheel effect. You've got to continuously start putting energy inputs, new ideas to keep that momentum building and building and building and building. And then, like you said, we're building a media brand. We're gearing up to potentially be acquired one day. We don't want to be sponsored by, we want to be owned by. So we have a whole strategy about being the world's first professional services show to be acquired. Won't be Joe Rogan's level of the hundreds of millions, but it'll certainly make a chunk into the dent to prove that podcasting should be investable assets. Podcasting people should be paying to play to get involved in them, and be seeing that they're the most trusted form of medium. People spend so much on ads, so much other things. But actually, if someone, and don't get too hell-bent on downloads, I'm getting on my soapbox here, but I bloody will. It's about actually, if someone's going to give you if someone's going to listen to this episode end to end, that proves you've got a really good quality content and people care about what you're doing. That person listening to you for 30 minutes every week is an invaluable potential fan, referrer, business person at some point in the future, rather than getting touched on a short form video clip for 3 seconds, never going to watch the full episode, but being tapped on the TikTok elbow or what have you. So I feel like, don't get too worried about the official number of downloads. Think about the average listening time, the quality of those people, because if they're listening to it end to end, they care about you. And it's about taking those people, turning them into super fans, loyal fans, and growing from there.
On top of all of that, the relationships that you forge with the guests, those guest conversations, that's immensely valuable as well. Rob, I want to ask about, so 500 episodes is very impressive. How do you make sure that those older episodes still see the light of day? Do you re-promote older episodes? How do you work that into your promotion cycles?
Absolutely bang on, John. And it's so true. We just did it this week. My friend Jody Hill, who's one of the top mental health voices, it's been Mental Health Awareness Week. And that was in episode 2. And we have a searchable website on our website, so we can put in the keywords. Again, I'm a big, what are the keywords? What are the datas? What's easily accessible? So we have an events of the year calendar, everything that's going on in and around the legal world and in the general world. And we think about how then we can repurpose an episode from that. Okay. So there's obviously mental health awareness, Christmas, July 4th, we do Christmas specials, things going on, anything where there's an event or something going on in the world, we have that tracked. And we use that as an opportunity to then repurpose, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to audience jack, right? When stuff is trending on hashtags, we want to make sure that we're talking about those conversations. So we're at the front doorstep of that. Similar to, why do I want to come on your show? I want to hijack your audience. I hope people listening to this enjoy, if 2 or 3 people, ideally a few more, enjoy this and start hearing about the Legally Speaking podcast or refer that to people, I feel like I've done my job. Similarly, when I share it, you're going to hope people are going to want to know more about your show. And that's just the way it works. It's about audience growth, audience collaboration is domination. But yeah, absolutely. Content repurpose is really important strategy. And of course, you can modernize it, right? So our audio quality wasn't that great way back then. Our branding was different. So we put it in slightly new branding. We use the new images of the individual. We use the quotes that might be timeless quotes or what have you. So it's never dated, but we're very keen to do evergreen content interviews. So we try not to do too much dated content. We try and do it, and we explain to our guests in advance that, the longer we can kind of not say this week, this is happening, and we remove that from the interview, then we've kind of got more legacy evergreen content to keep those episodes churning out again and again and again.
And this is why it's so important to make sure that your episodes are tagged and organized properly, and the data is structured in a way that's indexable, it's searchable, not just for search algorithms, but to your point, for when you know that you have episodes in your back catalog that you want to go and highlight again.
The key, what we're good at, or what we were good at when no one cared about the show and no one knew about us, is knowing who's on the rise.
Right. Yep.
What I mean by that is when someone's hit there, they're not going to come on your show. They're too busy. They don't care about you. But if you get someone who's on the rise and you get them early enough that they're grateful for the opportunity, and then when they get there, you repurpose, you get that audience jack back, you get that value back, you get that lifetime value back off them without them even noticing. And the relationship started organic because you helped them first.
Yeah, I like to advise my clients on breaking up your target guests into 3 buckets when you're first starting out. The friendly contacts that'll help you out just because they trust you, they know you, they like you, and they want to help you out.
Yeah.
And that second bucket is the rising stars, the people that want to get their voice out there, that you're placing a bet on for the future. And then your dream guests. Once you're established, you can go out and reach out to dream guests. That's kind of validating to hear that kind of perspective from you. In your marketing, you've mentioned that you're on a mission to disrupt the legal recruitment sector. So it sounds like the podcast is helping you achieve that mission.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully what I've shared thus far proves proof of concept. I take time away from my family to go around the world to do that as well. So, I know it sounds exciting that I've been in Ibiza, I've been to Dubai, but I'm also very family focused. Like I've got a young daughter. I want to be around her. I've built this life so I can be. I don't get stuck in the corporate trap, and I can be a creator and business builder and owner and have that freedom and flexibility. But I'm also very passionate about delivering on this mission. So yeah, I will go out there, and when we go to these places, we do the work. Yeah, it's great that we're doing an interview in the sunshine. There's a poolside panel, but I'm researching the guests. I'm getting the best quality information out of them because we're drowning in information but craving wisdom, right? And so I need to get that wisdom out of my guests to ensure that we're top tier. It's like, I listen to League Speaking Podcast because the interviews genuinely fill my cup with entertainment, education, and relevant, helpful information that's going to help me become a better lawyer or a better legal professional or someone enhance my legal career. And what I mean by that is we're never going to be a Diary of a CEO, and we don't want to be. Because, unless you get that big to Diary of CEO, which I'm sure a lot of people know about, I'm sure I'm talking to, I know the US audience, I'm sure people are familiar with it. They've got so big now, they can have politicians on there, but it's not Diary of a CEO anymore. It's not CEOs on this. It's sports stars. It's anyone. It's anything, right? Because unless you get that big, stay to what I said to you before, that TOI, that topic of influence, because that's where you're going to get brands. That's when you're going to get partnerships. That's where you're going to get leads. That's where you're going to get trust. That's when you're going to get your micro nano communities really coming together and being part of you and supporting you. And if you get a major breakthrough, then sure, have who the hell you want on your show all the time and just make it into whatever you want it to be. But I think being really strategic is really important.
Awesome. Yep. And it's clear that you've led with that why throughout this whole process. And that's one of the driving forces to the success of the Legally Speaking podcast. So, Rob, I've got one final question for you.
Sure.
Where do you take the show from here? What's on the horizon for Legally Speaking?
Yeah, we want to be the number one legal show in the world. We're in the top 1% of shows in the world. We're in the number one in the UK. We're probably all but there. Arguments, if we could argue we are, but I think we absolutely do want to have that badge and be known to, if anyone thinks of legal media, thinks of legal interviews, thinks of legal information, they think of Legally Speaking podcast. And we want to be the first show to be acquired by a major organization that shakes the industry and proves that podcasting wasn't just a nice to have, but it was the real business development strategic tool that actually created real ROI through conversation and connection. Because community is really important. Building a podcast around community is one of the strongest, smartest ways I think you can do it. So I want to be the first in the legal world to have done that.
Sage advice, Robert. And thank you for your time today. For folks that are listening, they can connect with you on LinkedIn. They can check out legallyspeakingpodcast.com for the event calendars, for all the latest episodes. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you'd like to highlight for our listeners?
I think one is just a strategy that we did when we first launched the show. I know I've talked quite a little bit sort of, generally give one strategic play, because this again could come across a little bit overwhelming for somebody who has never started.
Yeah.
So when I first started Legal Speaking Podcast, again, thinking strategically, I've referenced that we had a topic of influence. What I didn't say when we first started is we were very, very intentional about who our first guests were. And I mentioned collaboration as domination. So when we invited our first guest, we invited the presidents of the London Young Lawyers Group, which is a society over here in the UK, which has around 7,000 members. Now, those 7,000 members are my ideal legal recruiting avatar. They're sort of mid to junior level lawyers, which of course are ones that I would want to recruit or get known to, but I'd already got relationships with my competitors, right? Because I'm new into the market with KC Partners. So that's why we called it Legal Speaking Podcast Point of Difference and then Hook on the back end. So why did I invite those on? Because they had a trusted audience. And what were they going to do when it aired as the first episode? They'd never been invited to a podcast before. They put it in their newsletter to 7,000 people. They put it out to their social networks. They promoted it. So from starting from zero through being strategic and going to the organization societies where I've got trusted voice, trusted influence, I was able to grow, and I immediately got leverage. And then I got ratings and reviews early from key people of influence when the relationships were nice and high. So think about who are organizations, societies that have trusted data, networks that you could hijack, that you could invite on, that then they can send out to their audience, that's going to boost your start. And the other thing is, I mentioned before around Netflix, it's really important. You don't just go onto Netflix and watch one show of a new series. You like to binge watch it. So we also stacked content, right? So when we launched, we released a few episodes, and then we're into flow to ensure we can continue to deliver. And we're always social listening and asking for feedback very, very early on to ensure that we're delivering on what we wanted to. So that would just be a couple of other strategic things I would think about if I was launching a show.
Well, for folks that are listening this far into the episode, they just found a couple golden nuggets that they can put into play when they launch their podcast.
There we go. Well, look, it's been an absolute blast, John. Congrats on everything you're doing. It's been a real pleasure. Hopefully we can collaborate again in the future, but I'm passionate about this stuff, so I appreciate you giving me the time today.
And then I appreciate you. Thank you so much.